Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. So this slide doesn't want to work. I tried it many times. Okay, here we go. So I want to talk to you about something that I thought about during the interview I did with Nico Birkholz yesterday on the channel. It's a great interview if you are interested in what a fellow Rocket Lab investor thinks, and he shares very valuable content on Twitter. You can go ahead and check it out. The point is that I'm a firm believer that Rocket Lab is going to run out of money, and that is maybe not even correct to say run out of money. I'm a firm believer that they are going to need to raise money to be able to reach their goals, and because they're going to they will need to raise money sooner than later, probably in 2024, maybe in 2025. I wanted to go over the scenarios and what that means for the stock and why they need to raise that money. And this is a big risk for the stock. There's just no two ways about it. I have to be honest and upfront about it. This is in the current market environment, when the interest rates are very high and it's very hard to raise money, this can potentially hurt us as shareholders. So let's get into the video. Please make sure you're subscribed if you haven't, and let's get into it. So I believe there's 4 scenarios that we can hit on how to raise money. So I think that the biggest reason that we will need to raise money is because to launch space infrastructure is not cheap, and we know that that is the stated goal of Rocket Lab. Step 1 was the rocket launches, that's check. Step 2 is the space systems, that's a check. They're making, satellites, reaction wheels and everything, and when you put these two together, then you can make your own infrastructure or space services department in the company, which is about 80 to 90% of the income of the space industry. So if you look at like a pie chart of where the money comes from in space investments, only like 5% is coming from the launch, and another 5% is coming from satellite and all these manufacturing, and the rest of the money comes from services in space, i.e. Starlink, OneWeb, the Kuiper space satellite, which is not up and running yet, communication satellites and other things that, service from space. And to give you an idea how not cheap these things are, I did a little bit of research, and here is about Starlink. So the Tesla CEO and founder of SpaceX, a rocket ship venture that seeks to colonize Mars, said investment costs before Starlink achieves full positive cash flow would be $5 to $10 billion. So that is with a B. So that means that before they reach cash flow positive from their Starlink, they need to invest $5 to $10 billion, and the investment doesn't stop there. It just means that at that point, they are cash flow positive, but they might be, no, that's a stupid thing to say, that they might be investing more than their cash flow. But I would say that, because then they would not be cash flow positive. I know, it's late in the evening. So, but they would still use the cash flow to reinvest into Starlink. But anyways, they would need the $5 to $10 billion. Now we look at how much Amazon is preparing to invest into their Kuiper satellite mega constellation, and that is a 10 billion number into the Kuiper project. And again, we are in the B's, billions, and we're not in the single. So both companies 5 to 10, and Amazon is 10 billion. I try to look at OneWeb. This is an already existing competitor to SpaceX's Starlink, and the only thing that I found is they managed to raise 500 million, and with this they secured a 2.4 billion in funding. But this 2.4 billion in funding is a bit tricky because they already have satellites up in space, and this company happened to go bankrupt in sometime like 2021 or 2020, and this is the new investors. So they have already spent money on the space infrastructure, probably in the billions, and then they went bankrupt. And from the new investors, they need 2.4 billion. I don't know the exact number again, but again, it's in the B's, and it's not 1 and not 2. So now we go back to this. So I believe that they're going to need to raise money to be able to build out their mega constellation. And this money can be raised as equity or as a loan or a combination of thereof. So obviously, because the market cap of Rocket Lab is so small, if they would take a $2 billion loan, also their income is so small currently, that would really hurt the balance sheet and the security of the company, their financial well-being. But if the market cap is 2 billion and they need to raise 2 billion, that's a 50% dilution of all the shareholders. So that's also not really workable. A good solution could be a convertible loan. So that means that they take a loan, but if the share price goes up after a certain point, the loan turns into equity. And this is a very good solution when you don't want to take the loan, but the investors don't agree on the company's valuation, and then you get best of both worlds. If the company's valuation doesn't go up, then you can pay off the loan and the shares don't convert, and nobody gets diluted. But if it's going super well for the company, then the shares get converted, and all the shareholders get diluted, but at a much higher valuation than when they took the loan. So what I'm trying to say is we kind of need the stock price to go up for Rocket Lab. We really need the stock price to go up so that this would make sense. So what are the scenarios that we can arrive to where Rocket Lab needs to raise money? So one scenario would be that this would be the worst scenario, is that Neutron is delayed and they run out of money developing Neutron. So they need to raise money before Neutron has flown and is out on the pad. And on top of it, their valuation is in the single billions. That means that they would be raising money from a position of weakness. They would probably not even be able to raise money for this space infrastructure. They would basically probably need to do it in stages and just raise money. And think about it, if they need $200 million more, that would dilute, at the current valuation, that would dilute us by 10%. So that's not good. If they would want to raise 800 million, which is a much nicer number, it's still not enough to do the full space systems, but it would get them, like partially there. It would still be very bad at this valuation and Neutron not being ready. And here, even them taking a loan, I think would not really be an option, because if Neutron is not flying, the cash flows are very unpredictable, and it would just make the balance sheet look very bad. So now, scenario number 2. Neutron is delayed, and they run out of money, but I mistyped it here, but the stock price is in the tens of billions, so the single tens of billions. This would obviously mean that if they would need to raise $1 billion, it would only dilute the stock by 10%. Maybe they can take a convertible loan and say that if the stock reaches 20 billion in valuation, then the shares convert into 1 billion, and then we only get diluted by 5%, which would be a completely acceptable dilution for me. Yes, so this is the somewhat bad. So now we go to the almost good scenario. So that would be that Neutron is on time and on budget, and on top of it, no, not on top of it, but despite this, we are still in the single billions of valuation. So this is not good, because we would be very much diluted as shareholders, but it's good because maybe we can take a loan, because if Neutron is flying, then the cash flows become much more predictable, and if they would take a loan, it would make the balance sheet look not good for a short amount of time, but then they can use the cash flow from Neutron to pay back the loan, and then we don't get diluted as shareholders. We just have a few not so good years. Then scenario 4 is where we are going to the moon. So that would be the best one. So Neutron is on time and on budget. And on top of it, we are in the tens of billions. I don't know why there's so many mistakes in this text. It's late in the evening, guys. So not in the tens of millions. That would suck. We are in the tens of billions. So we can just raise $1 billion and it doesn't really move the needle in terms of dilution. If we would be in the 20 billion raising from a position of power, again, a 1 billion raising of money would be a 5% dilution. We are currently diluting, I don't want to say something stupid, but I think it's about 3% a year on stock-based compensation, and we're not really flinching about it, okay? So a 5% would be totally acceptable to me. And on top of it, if they would do a convertible loan that maybe at 40 billion, if we reach that valuation, then the shares would convert. At that time, getting an extra billion into the company is a 2.5% dilution. That would be super good. Or, oh my God, my spelling, I don't get what has happened here. So, or if, you know, Neutron is really flying and it's very nicely predictable, we just take a loan and nobody gets diluted anything. But this is a very, very important consideration, I think, for every Rocket Lab shareholder that I cannot understate how important it is, because the space infrastructure is potentially the bulk of Rocket Lab's basically future business. And to give you an example, Starlink's valuation is estimated to be $100 billion versus SpaceX without Starlink, which is a $30 billion. And you add the two together, that's how you get that SpaceX is worth $130 billion. But the rocket part of it is only about $30 billion. And Starlink is $100 billion, which is crazy. So that means that if Rocket Lab would be 10 billion in valuation in some nice future, just the rockets and space systems part, and you would add the space infrastructure, maybe the valuation could go all the way to $40 billion easily. And I think that many of the Rocket Lab investors that I have spoken to, this is the reason why they're investing into Rocket Lab, because Rocket Lab is going to develop this space infrastructure. But you really need to make sure that the company and Peter Beck is not biting off more than they can chew. And I believe that a mega constellation announcement could 3x the stock price. It depends a little bit on how they do the announcement. And the only problem is that when you announce such a thing, so let's say that they announce that they found a new use case where, you know, customers would be paying a lot of money for space manufacturing. Let's say that they can shoot up these capsules and manufacture an X material in space. They would very immediately start getting competitors. So it's very important that they act in a very fast and decisive manner to not let competition come in, and so that they can keep their moat. Because if you build out the constellation and you're the best, it's just too much money for a new player to enter the market. But if you guys both do it at the same time, then both of you spend billions and billions of dollars, and then once the mega constellations are done, then you compete away your price advantage. So I think it's very important that Rocket Lab moves really, really fast. And the only way to do that is some sort of raising of money, whether that's a loan or a convertible or an equity. And to do that, we really need to have the markets come back. We need the Fed to, you know, ease a little bit on the money supply, and we need them to be in a strong position, meaning, you know, Neutron on plan, Neutron having a lot of new contracts. And I'm very curious how this is going to happen. And I feel that this was very, very important for fellow Rocket Lab investors to know, because this is a big risk in the company. I think it's going to work out fine, but I cannot predict the future. So thank you so much for watching. By the way, I started a Patreon. There is a link to it in the description box below. It's going to be really cool as soon as I have the time to get to it. My plan is I'm going to upload all the stocks that I watch with my valuation models and with my thesis. And I will even add stocks that I would be buying if they hit the right price, and you will be able to see my target price. And that would not be investment advice. It would be more like to make you think. You can use the models to put in your own assumptions, and you can see how I think. But if you join now, it's basically just to support me, which would be very nice of you. Thank you. And I think in a few weeks, I'm going to start, uploading the first of these things, and then you actually get some value for your money. Anyway, so thank you so much for checking it out. Please make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao, ciao.